It's not your words they remember, it's your silence that haunts them. Some people will forget the long texts you sent. They'll forget the nights you poured your heart out, trying to be understood. But they will never forget the moment you went silent. The day you stopped calling, stopped explaining, stopped showing up. That is the day you etched yourself into their memory forever. And my friends, that's what today's truth is all about. Hey folks, imagine this. You walk into a room that's been filled with noise, clashing voices, people shouting over each other, trying to win the argument. And then, suddenly, one person goes silent. No exit speech, no drama. They just walk out. What happens? Everyone stops. They look around. The silence becomes louder than the noise ever was. That's the power I'm talking about. See, we've been fed a lie. We've been told that silence is weakness, that if you don't speak, they win, that if you don't explain, they'll misunderstand you. But let me break that lie right here. Silence is not retreat. It's a revolution. It's the final move of someone who no longer needs to perform, someone who has nothing to prove, someone who has chosen peace over approval. As Marcus Aurelius once said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. And you do that not by screaming, but by vanishing. Because when you stop reacting, stop chasing, stop begging to be seen, you become unforgettable. Not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. And here's where it gets real, my friends. When you go silent, you're not just removing your voice. You're removing your energy, your emotional availability, your validation. And that absence, it burns. It's like the sun disappearing without warning. It leaves them cold, confused, and craving the warmth they once took for granted. They might laugh at first, shrug it off, tell their friends you're just being dramatic. But give it time, give it space. That silence will stretch like an empty hallway in their mind, and every step they take inside it echoes with the question, did I just lose something I'll never find again? Because the truth is, people don't remember noise. They remember what left them in shock. And silence is shock. It scrambles their logic. It bruises their ego. And it forces them to sit with something they've never had to face before. Their own reflection without your attention shining on it. So don't think for a second that being silent makes you weak. It makes you dangerous. It makes you unpredictable. It makes you the one they can't read, can't replace, and can't stop thinking about. The loudest people in the room might win the moment, but the silent ones, they win the memory. This isn't about playing games. This isn't manipulation. This is discipline. This is saying, I value my peace more than your confusion. This is becoming the version of you that walks away not to hurt them, but to heal yourself. That's real power, and that's what makes you unforgettable. So if you're ready to let your silence speak for you, if you're done trying to be understood by people who never really listened, drop this in the comments. My silence is sacred. Let them wonder. Let them feel it. Let them remember. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and stay with me, because this journey, it's just getting started. Number 1, silence isn't an absence. It's a message. Your silence will disturb them more than your presence ever did. You see, most people think silence is just space, just emptiness, just absence. But here's the truth they don't want to admit. Silence isn't emptiness, it's energy leaving the room. And when the energy that once held them together vanishes without a sound, that's when the unraveling begins. You didn't ghost them, you didn't vanish out of bitterness. You sent a message, louder than any text, louder than any final speech could ever scream. Imagine this, my friends, a lighthouse in the middle of a storm. For weeks, months, maybe even years, that light flashes consistently. Ships pass by safely, always knowing where to look, always knowing it's there. But one night, the light stops. Not because it broke, not because it was attacked, but because the keeper decided, enough. No announcement, no warning. The sea keeps moving, but now there's panic. Where did the light go? What if I need it? Who turned it off? That's you. When you pull back your light, the energy you gave freely, they feel the darkness, even if they pretend they don't. This is when the questions start to flood their mind. Did I push them too far? Are they just trying to manipulate me? Will they ever come back? What if they've moved on? What if I was never that important to begin with? These aren't your questions to answer. These are the echoes that your silence created. And what makes those questions unbearable is that you're no longer there to calm them. People are addicted to attention. We live in a world where noise equals value. If you're not posting, not texting, not explaining, not reacting, then you must be broken, right? That's the lie society feeds you, that if you're silent, you're weak, that if you don't chase them down, you never cared, that if you don't speak up, you have nothing worth saying. Let me break that lie right now. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you've finally decided to stop wasting your breath on people who never listened. You don't have to raise your voice to raise your value. You don't need to explain your worth to someone who walked away from it like it was nothing. You don't need to justify your peace to people addicted to chaos. And yeah, at first it will be hard. Your mind will scream at you to fix it, to reach out, to explain, to prove you were the good one. You'll rehearse what you could have said. You'll write a message and delete it 100 times. That's your old programming. That's your wounded self trying to rewrite a story that already ended. But the evolved version of you, the one rising in silence, knows better. Knows that every word you don't speak becomes part of your legacy. Because here's the truth, folks. The one who reacts first loses. The one who needs closure never gets it. The one who keeps chasing will never be chased. And the one who learns to sit in silence becomes unforgettable. Not because they shouted, but because they left quietly and never came back the same. People remember who disappears differently. They forget the loud ones, the angry ones, the dramatic ones, but they never forget the one who walked out of their life like a ghost. No doors slammed, no bridges burned, no last message to dissect. Just gone. That kind of silence doesn't fade. It lingers, it stains, it whispers through time, because it's not the noise that makes them miss you. It's the meaning they never got. They'll scroll through your name, check your page, wait for a sign, any sign, a post, a story, a like. But when there's nothing, that's when they break. Because you were the one they thought they could decode, the one they thought would always be available. But now, you're unreadable. And that unreadability becomes a prison in their own mind. You're not being heartless. You're not playing games. You're reclaiming your energy. You're teaching them that your presence was a privilege, not a promise. That your silence isn't a wall. It's a mirror, one that reflects back everything they didn't want to see. And here's the beauty in all of this. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need a dramatic ending. You just needed stillness. And in that stillness, you rebuilt yourself. They'll try to figure out if your silence means pain or power. But the truth is, it's both. It's the pain of everything you went through in silence, and the power you gained because of it. So let them wonder, let them talk, let them create their own answers. You're no longer in the business of explaining yourself to people who misused your clarity. You're done with rehearsed apologies, done with overthinking, done with chasing validation from people who never saw the storm inside you. You are the storm now, and the eye of every storm, quiet, still, focused, unshakable. So if you're done explaining your worth, if you're done screaming into deaf ears, if you're ready to let your silence echo louder than their noise ever could, write it in the comments. My silence is sacred. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that real power doesn't need to be loud. Because silence, my friends, isn't a retreat. It's a warning, and we've only just begun. Stay with me. Number 2, they expected drama. You gave them stillness. They thought you'd explode. Instead, you evaporated. That's the moment everything changed. They walked away loud, maybe not with words, but with energy, with pride, with performance. They thought they had the upper hand. They expected fallout. They expected chaos. They expected you to panic, to break character, to prove your weakness by reacting. They expected the same movie they've seen before, someone begging, pleading, sending that long, emotional message at 2 a.m., trying to rewrite an ending that was never theirs to write in the first place. But you didn't do what they expected. You didn't fight for the illusion. You didn't chase their confusion. You gave them stillness, unapologetic, unshaken, surgical stillness. And it hit them harder than any words ever could. Because people who are addicted to attention interpret silence as rebellion. They think if you don't scream, you must be plotting. If you don't explain, you must be cold. But stillness, real stillness, is scarier than rage, because it means you've finally become emotionally unreachable, not bitter, not dramatic, clear, and clarity is terrifying to those who built their identity off your chaos. Let's be honest, folks, they weren't ready for your peace. They were ready for your pain. They had their script memorized. They knew their lines, and they were just waiting for you to deliver yours. But you dropped the script, left the stage, and lit the theater on fire behind you. You didn't argue. You didn't clap back. You didn't show them your tears. You showed them your absence. And that silence, it rewrote the whole story. Because stillness isn't passive. Stillness is surgical. It cuts, quietly, cleanly, without mess, without warning. It doesn't ask for attention. It demands reflection. When you stopped responding, you didn't just take away your voice, you took away their ability to control the narrative. And now they're spiraling. Now they're stuck asking questions they never wanted to ask. Did I misread them? Why aren't they reacting? Was I even that important? Did I just lose something rare? And the worst one of all, what if they've actually moved on? That's what stillness does. It flips the mirror back onto them. And most people can't handle what they see without your energy there to distract them. Your lack of response exposes everything they've buried under ego and performance. And yes, some of them will act like they don't care. They'll post like they're winning. They'll laugh a little louder, flirt a little harder, pretend they're happier than ever, but don't be fooled. That's not joy, it's noise. Noise to drown out the silence you left behind. And no matter how loud they get, they still can't cover the one thing echoing in their mind. Why didn't they fight for me? Because that's what breaks them, not your silence alone, but the fact that your silence was calm. It wasn't manipulative, it wasn't reactive. It was peaceful, detached. You didn't block them, you didn't try to prove anything. You simply let them feel what life is like without your presence. And that presence, that was never ordinary. They underestimated it, took it for granted, thought it would always be there, until it wasn't. And here's the beauty, my friends. You didn't do it to get a reaction. You did it because you were finally tired of giving CPR to something that didn't want to breathe. You let them go with grace, and that grace now haunts them harder than revenge ever could. Stillness is not weakness. Stillness is self-respect. It's the sacred discipline of choosing yourself when they expected you to fall apart for them. And the truth? Most people expect you to crumble when they pull away. But when you stand still, silent, grounded, focused, they don't know what to do with that. They expected a child. They met a warrior. So if you've stopped playing their game, if you've chosen peace over proving yourself, write it in the comments. I chose stillness over chaos. Let them see it. Let them feel it. Let them wonder how someone they expected to break became the very storm they can't outrun. And stay with me, because what comes next will shift everything. Number 3. You took the one thing they can't replace, your energy. They didn't lose access to your words. They lost access to your power. There's a difference between leaving someone and losing someone. They left, sure, but you're the one they lost. And not because you yelled, not because you begged, but because you did the one thing they never expected. You stopped giving them your energy. And let me tell you something, folks. When someone loses your energy, they don't just feel the silence. They feel the starvation. At first, they don't notice it. They mistake your silence for distance. They think it's temporary. They think you'll cave. They think you're just giving them space, playing hard to get, waiting for the right time to reach out again, because that's what they're used to. That's the pattern. Give it a week, 2 at most, and you'll be back. You'll send something, a message, a meme, an emoji, a check-in, something. That's what they expect. But that message never comes. That call never rings. That presence never returns. And that's when it hits them. You didn't just go silent. You went sovereign. You took your light, your warmth, your validation, your emotional presence, and you took it all with you. The energy that used to flood their world is now gone. And no matter how many distractions they throw at it, no matter how many new people they try to surround themselves with, it's not the same. Because your energy was never casual. It wasn't replaceable. It wasn't background noise. It was felt. They feel it when their phone doesn't light up the way it used to. They feel it when they post something hoping you'll see it. And nothing happens. No response, no reaction, just silence. And now the silence starts to hum. It vibrates. Because the absence of your energy isn't just a blank space. It's a void they can't fill. You see, my friends, energy is currency, and you were rich in it. You gave it freely, consistently, patiently, even when they didn't deserve it, even when they dismissed it, even when they thought they'd always have it. You gave them the most valuable thing anyone can offer, attention fueled by care. But now, that account is closed, that stream is dry, and they're left standing at the well holding an empty cup. And what makes this cut so deep is they can't buy what they lost. They can't earn it back with a quick apology or a fake excuse, because this time it's not about them, it's about you. You're not trying to hurt them. You're just done bleeding for people who never brought bandages. You're not trying to make a point. You're just done wasting energy on someone who only showed up when they needed to be seen. Let's get real. They didn't appreciate the glow when they had it. And now they're in the dark, acting like they're fine, until they aren't. Until the silence becomes heavy. Until the memories start rewinding. Until the energy they used to drink like water is nowhere to be found. And that absence, it becomes an addiction they can't satisfy. You were the spark, the presence, the safe place. And when you withdrew that power, you shifted the dynamic forever. Now they're not trying to reach you because they miss the conversations. They're trying to reach you because they miss who they were when they had your light on them. That version of themselves doesn't exist anymore, and it scares them. And maybe, just maybe, they'll try to replace it. New people, new attention, new followers. But let's be honest, replicas don't carry the same frequency. You were never just a source of attention. You were a source of stability. You were someone who made them feel seen in a way they didn't even know they needed. And now that it's gone, they can't stop feeling it. You didn't take revenge. You took responsibility for your peace, for your energy, for your evolution, and that's what makes it powerful. Because real power isn't in being loud, it's in being missed, quietly, desperately, in the kind of way that keeps people awake at night, wondering why the room feels colder now, why the world feels quieter now. So if you've stopped overgiving, if you've finally reclaimed your energy from those who mistook it for free fuel, write this in the comments. My energy is expensive. Show the world that your silence isn't punishment. It's protection. You're not avoiding anyone. You're investing in yourself. And stay with me, because this silence, it's not the end. It's the rebirth. Number 4, their mind can't process what you didn't say. You didn't leave them with closure, you left them with questions, and that's what haunts them. People can move on from what they understand. They can get over an argument. They can forget harsh words, even recover from heartbreak if the ending made sense. But what they can't move on from, what loops endlessly in their mind, is the silence they can't decode. The absence that never came with an explanation. You didn't give them a story. You didn't give them a final scene. You gave them nothing, and that nothing, it became everything. A blank page their brain is now obsessed with trying to fill. You didn't say goodbye, you didn't argue, you didn't justify. You vanished like fog at dawn. No noise, no trail, no warning. And that's exactly what their mind can't process. You see, the human brain is a pattern-seeking machine. It needs reasons, it needs meaning, it needs something to point at and say, that's why it ended, that's why they stopped, that's what went wrong. But when you remove the pattern, when you don't give them a conclusion, their brain spirals. It replays every moment, it dissects every message, it zooms in on things you said months ago, not because you did something wrong, but because you didn't say anything when they expected everything. Now they're stuck in their own mind, trying to find clues in your silence like a detective searching a crime scene. They replay the moment you stopped replying, the shift in your tone, the day you went quiet. And with every day that passes, the questions get louder. Did I go too far? Did they ever care? Are they done for good? Why aren't they saying anything? They scroll through old texts, looking for closure that never came. They stalk your socials, hoping for a sign, a crack, something that explains your silence. But every post you don't make, every word you don't say, every reaction you don't give, becomes a deeper wound. Because silence doesn't provide answers. It opens doors that never close. And here's the part that really eats at them. You never tried to hurt them. You didn't leave to play games. You didn't stay silent to be cruel. You simply moved on, stoically, calmly, with a level of emotional discipline they didn't expect. And now, their mind is doing all the talking for you. They imagine you've already healed, that you're with someone else, that you're out there laughing unbothered while they're still here trying to solve a puzzle with no edges. The worst part? You didn't leave them with hate. You left them with grace. And grace, when given after rejection, becomes unbearable. Because when someone screams at you, you can call them toxic. When someone begs, you can label them desperate. But when someone walks away without saying a word, you have nothing to use against them. No story, no excuse, no villain. And that's when the rewriting begins. They start turning the past into a fantasy. The bad days blur. The good ones become cinematic. Suddenly, the same presence they ignored now feels like a treasure. The same love they overlooked now feels like a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Not because you changed, but because your silence gave their imagination permission to romanticize what they lost. You became the one that got away, not because you begged to be remembered, but because you gave them no reason to forget you. The last thing they heard from you was nothing, and in that nothing, they hear everything, the strength, the clarity, the decision you never announced, but made. And that, my friends, is the real mind game. You didn't play it, but they're still trapped inside of it. So if you've chosen to stop explaining, if you've stopped trying to be understood by people who were never really listening, drop it in the comments. I owe no explanations. Let them wonder. Let them wrestle with the silence. Let their thoughts run in circles while you walk in peace. Because you don't need to be loud to be remembered. You just need to say nothing and mean it. Stay with me. This silence is only getting louder. Number 5. The one who doesn't react becomes the one they can't reach. The moment you stopped responding is the moment they started realizing they lost access to you forever. They thought they had you figured out, thought they knew your patterns, your responses, your timing. They knew exactly what button to push, what silence to break, what bait to throw out just to get you to bite. You were predictable, dependable, emotionally open. But something changed. Something shifted. You stopped reacting. Not with anger, not with games, not with guilt, just stillness. And let me tell you something, folks, that stillness hits harder than any insult ever could. Because the truth is, most people aren't afraid of you being mad. They're afraid of you being unavailable, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. When you were reactive, they knew they still had control. When you were explaining, they knew they still mattered. But the moment you stopped responding, you became unreachable. Think about it like this. Imagine a locked door, not slammed, not barricaded, just closed. And the key? Gone. No yelling gets it open, no crying breaks it down, no manipulation makes it budge. It's just quiet, still, final. That's what your silence became. A locked door they can't open anymore. And the worst part, you didn't even tell them you were closing it. See, they expected a flare-up, a breakdown, a final paragraph they could screenshot and dissect. But what they got instead was a mystery. You didn't block them. You didn't send a bitter goodbye. You just stopped showing up to the performance. You removed your energy like pulling the power cord from a machine, and now they're left in the dark, blinking, confused, trying to process a signal that's no longer being sent. And that's when the fear creeps in. Because now they're not sure if they ever really knew you. Now they're not sure if you'll ever come back. Now they're not even sure what your silence means. Is it anger? Is it indifference? Is it peace? The not knowing eats at them. Your absence becomes more powerful than your presence ever was. They'll start doing subtle things, liking old photos, posting cryptic stories, checking your page, hoping you're still watching, hoping you'll react like you used to. But you don't. You've unplugged from the game, not to manipulate them, but to reclaim yourself. Because here's the raw truth, my friends. You don't owe anyone a reaction, not a reply, not a defense, not an update. Just because they're poking at your silence doesn't mean you need to respond. Just because they're testing your peace doesn't mean you owe them chaos. You stopped being the person they could count on to always care, to always crack, to always chase. And in that shift, you became the one they now obsess over. Not because you did something dramatic, but because you did nothing at all. And let me be clear, this isn't about punishment. This is about preservation. You didn't go silent to get back at them. You went silent to get back to yourself, to protect your space, to stop leaking your power into hands that only closed tighter the more you tried to stay open. And now, they're realizing what they lost wasn't just your attention. It was your access. And that access, that was a privilege, not a guarantee. You're not a revolving door. You're not a reset button. You are a human being who finally learned to stop bleeding for people who only showed up when it was convenient for them. Now you're the one they can't read, the one they can't reach, the one who disappeared without a scene and left them to wrestle with their own reflection. And that reflection doesn't come with subtitles. So if you've become the version of you that no longer needs to react just to feel seen, if you've chosen calm over chaos, mystery over maintenance, sovereignty over validation, write it in the comments. They lost access to me. Let them feel what it's like to no longer know how to reach you. Because once you stop reacting, you become the one they'll never forget. And stay with me, because what comes next? That's when the regret really starts to bleed. Number 6, they'll test you, and that's when you win by doing nothing. Silence is the answer they never expect, and the only one they can't argue with. They always test you when they start to feel the silence. At first, they act like they're fine, like they've moved on. They post louder, laugh harder, pretend they're thriving. But deep down, they're waiting to feel your energy again, waiting to see if they still matter. And when the silence stretches longer than they can handle, that's when the test begins. It starts subtle, a random like on a post you made weeks ago, a vague story that's clearly about you, but never mentions your name. A hope you're doing okay text sent at the perfect time, not to reconnect, but to provoke. They're not reaching out to rebuild. They're reaching out to check the locks, to see if the door they once walked through so easily is still open. But here's the part they don't understand. You're not the same person who left it unlocked. See, before, you would have jumped at that message. You would have overthought it, sent a reply, cracked the silence, reopened the cycle. You'd think, maybe they've changed. Maybe this time they mean it. But this time, you know better. This time, you see the game for what it is. A pattern, a loop, a test. And the only way to win is to do nothing at all. They don't want you. They want control. They want confirmation. They want to know they still exist in your head rent-free. And when you give in, even a little, you hand them back the key. The moment you reply, like, react, explain, you reset the dynamic. You reopen the wound. You shrink back into someone who still needs to be chosen. But silence. Silence says, I've already chosen. And I chose peace. It's hard. I get it. You'll feel it in your chest. The urge to respond. The temptation to say something smart, something kind, something cold. Your fingers will hover over the keyboard. Your mind will spin stories. What if they really miss me? What if they finally understand? What if this is the apology I always wanted? But deep down, you know what it is. It's a trap, a well-crafted test wrapped in emotion and dipped in nostalgia. And if you respond, even with kindness, you give them oxygen again. You let them breathe in your power one more time, and then they disappear again. Because that's all they wanted. Not you, not truth. Just proof that you're still breakable. But not this time. This time, you hold the line. This time, you let the silence stretch a little further. You let the test fall flat. No likes, no replies, no explanations, just stillness. And here's what happens next. They panic. Because silence after the test is the real answer. It says you've moved on. It says you don't need them to know your mind anymore. It says the door is closed, and this time it's not out of spite. It's out of growth. It tells them, I've seen the pattern, and I'm done dancing in circles. They'll sit there refreshing their notifications, hoping for a flicker of the old you. But that version of you? Gone, not dead, evolved. And that evolution is louder than any comeback ever could be. The moment you stop being available to their ego is the moment you start becoming unforgettable to their soul. And that's the shift, folks. When you don't respond, not to be petty, not to play games, but because you've finally risen above the bait, you win. Quietly, completely. You win because you chose discipline over impulse. You chose strength over reaction. You chose self-respect over recycled validation. So if you've reached that place where the silence speaks louder than the test, where you no longer need to answer their confusion with your clarity, drop it in the comments. I passed the test by doing nothing. Let the world know that your growth doesn't need applause, that your silence is not a weakness. It's a wall they can't climb anymore. And stay with me, because the silence they're testing today will become the memory they can't escape tomorrow. Number 7. They always come back, but you're no longer the same. They return looking for the version of you they left behind, but that version doesn't live here anymore. It always happens. Maybe not next week, maybe not next month, but it happens. They come back. Sometimes it's a message at midnight. Sometimes it's a memory they send just because. Sometimes it's a comment under a post, hoping you'll notice. But it always starts the same way, with them acting like time healed something, when in reality, time just exposed what they lost. See, they never expected you to change. They expected you to wait, quietly, silently, longing for the day they'd return. They thought you were just giving them space, just cooling off, just waiting for a sign. But the truth is, while they were pretending to move on, you actually did. And now, they're not coming back to what they left. They're coming back to something they don't recognize, because you're not waiting at the same emotional doorway. You're not sitting in the same silence hoping they'll knock. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You've rebuilt the house, changed the locks, repainted the walls. You are not who you were, and that's what shocks them more than anything. They remember the version of you that overgave, the version that explained too much, that forgave too quickly, that reacted too fast. They come back looking for that version, the one who would have answered in seconds, the one who would have dropped everything just to feel seen. But instead, they're met with stillness, indifference, calm. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. And let's be honest, folks, that hits differently, because they didn't come back to apologize. They came back to re-access, to see if they still hold power, to see if they can still spark something in you. But they don't, not anymore. You don't hate them. You just don't need them. You don't want revenge. You just want peace. And peace, once you've tasted it, makes chaos taste like poison. So now they're confused. You're not angry, but you're not open. You're not distant, but you're not available. You're kind, but you're done. And that middle ground, that place where they can feel your growth but can't touch it, that's what burns. Because they didn't expect you to evolve in silence. They didn't expect your stillness to be a sign of strength. They thought it was weakness. They thought you'd break, but you didn't. You built. And now they're staring at someone who used to need them and realizing that person doesn't exist anymore. This is the moment when silence becomes a mirror. They see everything they couldn't see before. How much you loved them, how much you gave, how much you endured, and they feel it now, all of it. Not because you reminded them, but because your absence taught them. And sure, they might apologize, they might even be sincere, but it's not about sincerity anymore, it's about timing, and they're late. Not because they weren't watching, but because they weren't ready. And now, neither are you. You've outgrown the chapter they left you in. You've stepped out of the story they tried to write you into. You're no longer playing a role in their drama. You're the author of your own script now. And the part they used to play, it's already been written out. And maybe they'll try to start over. Maybe they'll beg for a second chance. But deep down, they'll feel it. It's not the same. The urgency, the spark, the warmth, it's gone. Not because you became heartless, but because you stopped being available to harm. And here's the most powerful part. You don't need to explain that to them. Let them feel it. Let them see it. Let your presence remind them of what they lost, and your silence remind them that it's not coming back. So if you're no longer waiting for the apology, if you're no longer hoping for the return, if you've already outgrown what once broke you, write it in the comments. I'm not who I was. Let them read it without your voice. Let them feel it without your touch. Let them stand at the door of a life they no longer fit inside, and stay with me, because the next chapter, that's the one they'll never get to read. Number 8. Silence leaves the deepest scar. It's not the goodbye they remember, it's the quiet after. When everything else fades, the fights, the texts, the last words, they won't remember what was said. They'll remember the silence, that long, stretched-out quiet that filled the space where your voice used to be. The space they thought they could walk away from and come back to when it suited them. But they didn't realize something. You weren't going silent to punish them. You were going silent to evolve. And evolution doesn't make announcements, it just stops showing up. They thought your silence was a phase, a mood, a tactic, something temporary. They thought you'd come back around like you always did, like you always used to. They thought silence meant you were hurting, and maybe you were, but you weren't breaking, you were becoming. And now, that silence isn't empty, it's echoing. Every day they scroll past your name. Every night they lie in bed with a memory that won't let go. Every time they open their phone hoping to see something from you and there's nothing, it hits. And it hits hard, not because you screamed, but because you never made a sound. You see, most people prepare for an argument. They prepare for backlash. They prepare for pain that comes in noise. But no one's ever ready for the kind that comes in stillness. That kind of pain creeps in, slowly, quietly. It slips into their mind and whispers, "You lost something you'll never get back." Because silence, real silence, isn't passive. It's not avoidance. It's a decision, a sacred one. The moment you decided your peace meant more than their confusion, your dignity meant more than their attention, your evolution meant more than another cycle, that's when the silence became unforgettable. It doesn't give closure. It doesn't give comfort. It leaves questions, and questions without answers don't fade with time. They grow. That's the scar, not the wound from what you said, but the wound from what you didn't say. The words you never gave them, the validation they never got, the final moment they thought they deserved, but never received. And now they carry it with them, quietly, silently, just like you left. They'll be in the arms of someone else, still wondering if you think about them. They'll be laughing with friends, suddenly going quiet when your name comes up. They'll smile in public and replay your silence when they're alone. Because your absence wasn't just a disappearance, it was a mirror. And in that mirror they saw what they did, what they broke, what they thought they'd never lose. But you didn't disappear to make them suffer. You disappeared because you were done explaining your worth to people who treated it like a discount. You disappeared because you had nothing left to prove. Because every word you once wanted to say became irrelevant the moment you realized they didn't deserve to hear it. And now they'll never forget you. Not because you were loud, but because you were gone. Not because you tried harder, but because you stopped trying at all. That silence, it lives in their head. It haunts every memory. It reminds them of a version of you they'll never access again. You became a ghost with weight, not loud, not bitter, just gone. And in a world addicted to noise, the one who masters silence becomes a legend in the minds of those who took them for granted. So if you've walked away with grace, if you've stopped proving, explaining, fixing, chasing, and started becoming, drop it in the comments right now. They'll never forget my silence. Say it. Show it. Let it echo beyond the noise of those who doubted you. And if this message hit your soul, if you're done playing small, done repeating cycles, done begging to be seen, like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another truth they don't want you to hear. Because here, silence isn't weakness. It's legacy. And yours has only just begun. Stay sharp, stay grounded. Your silence says it all.